Look out your window right now. Walk down a busy street. Turn on the news. Today, there are 8 billion human beings swarming over the surface of this planet. We've conquered every continent. We've touched the bottom of the ocean's deepest trench. We've walked on the surface of the moon. By every measure of biology, Homo sapiens is the most abundant, most successful large mammal in the history of Earth. We feel inevitable. We feel permanent. But hiding inside your blood, locked into the DNA of every human being alive today, is a mathematical scar. The echo of something that very nearly erased us. In August of 2023, a team of geneticists published a study in the journal Science that traced human genetic mutations backward through time. They weren't looking for a slow, triumphant march toward civilization. What they found was a cliff. Roughly 900,000 years ago, the ancestral human population didn't dip. It fell off the edge of a graph. A collapse of almost 99%. The entire breeding population of our ancestors, every single one of them, was reduced to somewhere around 1,280 people. For comparison, the giant panda is one of the most endangered animals on Earth today, and there are still roughly 1,800 of them left in the wild. 900,000 years ago, human beings were rarer than that. If you rounded up every one of our ancestors left alive on the planet, you could fit all of them into a single high school gymnasium. And here's the part that should actually unsettle you. This wasn't a single bad winter. This collapse, 1,280 people alone against the world, lasted for 117,000 years. For over 1,000 centuries in a row, humanity was one bad season away from not existing at all. Today, we're going to walk through the most dangerous era in our species' history. What caused it? What it did to us? And why, as of right now, in 2026, scientists are still fighting over whether we're even reading the evidence correctly. Go back 930,000 years. Welcome to the early to middle Pleistocene Transition. For decades, paleoanthropologists have been haunted by something they call the fossil gap. Dig through the dirt in Africa or Eurasia from 1.5 million years ago, and you'll find hominin fossils. Dig from 500,000 years ago, and you'll find plenty more. But in one specific window, between roughly 900,000 and 800,000 years ago, the fossil record goes almost completely silent. For a long time, scientists assumed they were digging in the wrong places. Bad luck, bad preservation. The 2023 genetic study offered a colder explanation. Maybe the bones are missing because there was almost nobody left to leave any behind. So what happened? Not a war, not a single predator, or a single disaster. A glitch in the climate itself. Before this window, Earth's ice ages ran on a relatively gentle 41,000-year rhythm. Cool down, glaciate, warm back up, repeat. Our ancestors had time to adapt. Then the rhythm broke. Ice ages stretched into brutal 100,000-year cycles. Glaciers swallowed the northern hemisphere. And because so much of the planet's water was suddenly locked into ice, the climate lost its moisture everywhere else. Africa, the cradle of our lineage, was hit by a mega drought. Forests died. Lakes cracked into dry mud. The megafauna our ancestors depended on for food began collapsing. They had no thick fur, no claws, no hibernation. Just a shrinking, starving population, backed into a corner by a planet that had changed the rules faster than biology could respond. Whoever these people were, they weren't us. Homo sapiens didn't exist yet. We were still hundreds of thousands of years from being born as a species. This was an earlier population, ancestral to us and to the Neanderthals and Denisovans who hadn't split off yet either. They had stone tools. They may have had some limited command of fire, though how much is still debated. They didn't have language the way we'd recognize it, or any way of knowing the ground was giving way beneath their entire population at once. For a few months after the 2023 paper came out, that was simply the story. Humanity had a near-death experience, and for the first time, there was hard genetic proof. Then other scientists checked the math. Science doesn't survive because one paper gets published and everyone nods along. It survives because every important claim gets attacked, on purpose, by people actively trying to break it. In 2024, 2 independent teams went after the bottleneck. The first, researchers at UC Berkeley, ran the same genetic data through a different statistical tool called MUSHI. It found no severe crash at all. Then they went further. They built synthetic genetic data of their own, engineered so they already knew the true history hidden inside it. And there was no bottleneck built into it. None. They fed that clean data into the original tool, FitCoal. FitCoal reported a severe bottleneck anyway. Think about what that means. If a tool finds a catastrophe even in data specifically built to contain no catastrophe, the catastrophe might be coming from the tool, not from the Ice Age. This isn't a minor technical squabble. FitCoal and MUSHI don't just disagree on a small detail. They disagree on whether the single most viral statistic in modern human evolution is real at all. One says humanity nearly vanished. The other says that number was never really there. Both sides are serious scientists, publishing in serious journals looking at exactly the same raw data. That's what makes this genuinely unresolved science, not settled history dressed up as a mystery for the sake of a better video. A second team raised an even simpler problem. The bottleneck signature showed up clearly in African populations and barely at all outside Africa. That should be impossible. Every non-African population alive today descends from people who left Africa within roughly the last 100,000 years. If all our ancestors really crashed to 1,280 people 900,000 years ago, that scar should be sitting in everyone's genome equally. It wasn't. And when this team compared how well each model actually explained the real data, the version without a severe crash fit better. By the end of 2024, the scientific tide was turning. The most viral extinction statistic in modern genetics might be a ghost, a glitch conjured by a brand new method, not a real event in our past. If you stopped the story here, that's exactly where most coverage of this topic still leaves it. Case closed, discovery overturned. But the original team didn't fold. If your method gets accused of hallucinating a catastrophe, there's only one real way to answer it. You test it against catastrophes you already know the answer to, at a scale nobody can argue with. So the original researchers, now joined by paleoanthropologists, built 10 billion simulated genetic datasets. 10 billion synthetic populations, each with a pre-programmed history. Some hiding a real bottleneck, some not. They ran both tools blind against every single one. FitCoal reliably found the crashes that were actually there. The rival method, under the exact same conditions, missed them. One result doesn't win an argument. So they went further and pulled in evidence that had nothing to do with genetics at all. They found it in the climate. 900,000 years ago sits almost exactly inside the Mid-Pleistocene Transition, the same shift where Earth's Ice Age rhythm broke. A separate 2024 study pinpointed the very first of these brutal new glaciations, called MIS-22, to roughly this same window, and tied it directly to a mass hominin migration out of Africa. The mechanism is almost cinematic. The Ice Age locked up so much of Earth's water that global sea levels dropped by around 110 meters, exposing dry land routes across what are now the Levant, the Black Sea Basin, and the southern Adriatic. At the exact same time, Africa was drying out behind them. The same event that may have been killing our ancestors was also, simultaneously, kicking a door open. It wouldn't have looked dramatic. No single dash across a land bridge. Small bands, generation after generation, drifting a little further than the one before, following herds that were making the identical, desperate migration for the identical reasons. Entire ecosystems were relocating together, not just one species. The Eurasian archaeological sites that start appearing in exactly this window are the leftover footprints of that slow-motion exodus. Proof sitting in the actual ground, independent of any genome, that something pushed a population which had stayed in Africa for well over 1 million years to finally start leaving it. And there's a third line of evidence. The most recent defense paper found that hominin brain size in the African fossil record measurably increased after this window closed. Not during it, after it. Whatever walked out the other side wasn't identical to what walked in. The case isn't closed. Be suspicious of anyone who tells you it is. But right now, 3 independent kinds of evidence, genetic, climatic, and anatomical, are tilting back toward the same conclusion. Something catastrophic really did happen to us, right on schedule.
Here's where most versions of the story get one detail badly wrong, and it's worth correcting. Every great ape alive has 48 chromosomes. Humans have 46. At some point, 2 ancestral chromosomes fused together to form what we call human chromosome 2. And you'll see channels claim flatly that this fusion happened during the bottleneck, forged by the pressure of cold and starvation. That's a great story. It isn't a fact. Chromosomal fusions are random accidents, not something environmental stress causes. And the dating itself is genuinely unresolved. Estimates range from 400,000 years ago to 4.5 million years ago, depending on the method. One well-known 2022 study landed close to 900,000 years, suspiciously near our bottleneck. But the scientists behind that estimate have publicly warned that a couple of shaky assumptions could push the real date 1 million years older. Nobody actually knows. Not yet. What we can say with more confidence, somewhere near the tail end of the bottleneck, roughly 800,000 years ago, genetic evidence marks the point where our lineage split from the ancestors of Neanderthals and Denisovans. The last moment we were all still the same population. We also know that the survivors, whoever they were, eventually mastered fire. At a site called Gesher Binot Yaakov in what's now Israel, archaeologists found burned seeds, scorched flint, and charcoal dated to roughly 790,000 years ago, right at the close of the bottleneck window. It's some of the strongest, earliest evidence anywhere outside Africa of hominins deliberately building and maintaining fire. It wouldn't have solved everything, but it would have meant warmth through the ice, protection from predators in the dark, and food that no longer had to be eaten raw. We don't know exactly where those 1,280 people stood. We don't know exactly what killed the rest. We can't even say the number 1,280 is definitely correct. What we can say is that something happened here. Something that keeps showing up independently in genes, in fossils, in ancient ice, no matter which team of scientists goes looking for it, and no matter how hard the next team tries to prove them wrong. And there's one more strange wrinkle worth sitting with. Because of how small that population was, human beings today have unusually low genetic diversity compared to almost any other species on the planet. There's more genetic variation between two groups of wild chimpanzees living on opposite banks of the same African river than there is between a random person born in Tokyo and a random person born in New York. We are genetically an oddly uniform species. And this bottleneck, real or still disputed, is one of the leading explanations for why. Here's what's strange once you actually sit with it. You are only here hearing this existing at all. Because roughly 1,280 people, in conditions we still can't fully picture, on a continent slowly turning against them, did not give up. Not because they were the strongest species that ever lived. They weren't. Not because they had some obvious advantage the fossil record makes clear. It doesn't. As far as anyone can tell, they survived on the same thing every human population has ever relied on when the odds turn against it. Enough of them, together, made it to the next season. And the one after that. For 117,000 years in a row, without a single generation of them knowing whether the next one would be the last. Every ancestor you've ever had ran that exact gauntlet and came out the other side. There are more than 8 billion people on this planet right now. Every one of them, without exception, traces back through that same needle-thin population. Every rivalry and every act of kindness happening somewhere today. Every person who has ever made you feel like humanity is too big to comprehend. Every one of them descends from the same few thousand survivors. Here's the part science genuinely can't tell you. Whether they knew how close it was. Whether any of them ever sensed for even a moment that they were the entire hinge 8 billion future lives were quietly balanced on. Maybe it's better that they never knew. But you do. Look at everything built since. The skyscrapers, the digital networks connecting billions of minds, every language ever spoken, every war ever fought, every piece of art ever made, and every person you have ever loved. All of it traces back through a corridor so narrow that a bad decade could have closed it forever. And the argument over exactly how close that door came to closing, it's still going on right now. In papers being written this year about the ancestors who made sure someone would be left to write them.